the recorded session to the Children's First website so that others can also view it at a later stage. So with no further ado, Ms. Constantinou, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the recording has started. I don't know if you can see it also in your page
Yes.
now. Perfect. I will share my screen first. All right. Just a second, because there is this window here. I'm very glad that I will be presenting here today the first steps of the Cypriot Children's Health and Environment Observatory. This is an effort coordinated by the Cyprus International Institute for Environmental and Public Health in the Cyprus University of Technology. And it's in collaboration, of course, with the Center of Excellence in Biobanking and Biomedical Research, the Biobank 𝐍𝐞𝐫𝐤, the Research and Education Institute of Child Health, the University of Cyprus, the FIPI Limited, and the CP Food Lab. So as Dr. Makris said, this is part of the Children-First network, the Mediterranean cohort for children that we're trying to set up. And today I'm going to present to you some facts about the rationale, why this project is needed, the objectives, the methodology. I'm going to present some preliminary results from the feasibility study that is currently taking place. And I will end up with a few considerations and your comments on this. For the rationale now, for the health status of the Cyprus general population, what we know is that the top 10 causes of death in 2019 have remained almost the same as in 2009. So, and this include the ischemic and hypertensive heart disease, the stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and other dementias. I'm sorry, some kinds of cancers that we can see here, as well as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes mellitus, and kidney diseases. Similarly, you can see here that we have, again, between 2009 and 2019, almost the same top 10 health risk factors remain for mortality and morbidity burden. These include, among others, the tobacco, high fasting plasma glucose, high blood pressure, dietary risks, high body mass index, and high LDL. Moving to the health status now of the Cyprus child population, we can see that the obesity and overweight prevalence for Cypriot children is among the highest in Europe. You can see here the latest data according to the latest survey of the Childhood Obesity Surveillance Initiative from WHO, and it shows here the prevalence of overweight, including obesity, according to the WHO definitions in boys and girls. And about now the consumption of fruit and vegetables, we conducted a survey in 2020 during the pandemic, where we asked parents about the consumption of fruits and vegetables from their children. And during that period and the period before the pandemic, and we saw that there was no change between these two time periods. And we can see that according to the guidelines, which say 5 a day for fruits and vegetables, we are much below that. We have only 50% of around 54% of the children consuming daily fruits, and only 1/3 of the children consuming vegetables daily. About the physical activity now, again in the same survey, we saw that only half of the children were doing little physical effort during their free time. On the other hand, we don't have a lot of data about the school exposures. A survey we conducted in 2021, which included the installation of sensors in 43 schools all over Cyprus, showed that 85% of the school time, the indoor air temperatures were above the recommended guideline of 27 degrees Celsius. Also, we saw that 1/3 of the indoor 24 PM 2.5 measurements were above the recommended WHO guideline of 15 micrograms per cubic meter. Cyprus is included in the Mediterranean region, and as we know, this is considered a climate change hotspot. Why is it considered a hotspot? It's because of its rising air temperatures, wildfires that have been present, droughts, reduction in air quality, and sea level rise. All these are projected to increase further in the future in terms of frequency and magnitude. Here in the graphs, you can see, for example, in the orange box, it's Nicosia, the capital of Cyprus. These are based on the PRECIS output, and it shows some probability density distributions of the daytime maximum temperature in different time periods. And if you see, the curves is tending to go towards the right. So we're having higher temperatures if we're moving by moving to future periods, time periods. Why do we want to focus now on children, and especially children entering the primary school? First of all, because of the Barker hypothesis, which states that the organism is plastic or sensitive to its environment during specific developmental periods. So when stimuli are applied during some early development stages, there are some changes generated that may persist throughout life. This is not limited only in the in utero environment, but also it extends into the childhood. Moreover, we know that children have an increased susceptibility to environmental exposures, and this is due to their rapid development, the difference they may have in behaviors, and the different metabolism of stressors they may have compared to adults. Moreover, they have their parents' environmental exposures, which leads for them to have some passive exposures. A study also showed that 3 out of 6 lung function risks trajectories, which contributed to 75% of the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease cases, they were associated with childhood factors like asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, allergic rhinitis, and eczema. Last but not least, based on the choices simulation model, we can see that the projected prevalence of obesity at future ages shows that there is a steep increase of obesity prevalence between the ages of 5 to 11 years old. So it seems like these ages between 5 to 11 is a critical time window of susceptibility, and it's a critical time window where interventions can take place. How can we do that? The EU now proposes the personalized medicine, personalized prevention model. So far, there is not a universally accepted definition from that, but from the Horizon 2020 Advisory Group, personalized medicine is aiming to tailor the right therapeutic strategy for the right person at the right time, and or to determine then predisposition to disease and or to deliver timely and targeted prevention. In order to do this, we need to characterize the individual's phenotypes and genotypes. How we can do that? Using molecular profiling, medical imaging, and lifestyle data. Moving on to the personalized prevention subfield, the PROPHET project suggests that the aim of this is to prevent the onset, progression, and recurrence of disease through the adoption of targeted interventions. And in order to do that, we need to consider the biological information, the environmental and behavioral characteristics, the socioeconomic and cultural context of individuals. In order to be able to do that and to apply the personal prevention model, we can use the human exposome concept and its tools. This was a term coined by Dr. Wild in 2005, and it was further refined in 2012. And what does the human exposome mean? It means the comprehensive characterization of all environmental exposures from conception until death, including the associated biological response. Here you can see, for example, the 3 overlapping exposome domains, the internal domain, a specific external domain, and the general external, and some parameters that they are included in each of these domains. And we can use the human exposome concept and its tools in order to explore association between multiple environmental exposures and outcomes. So what is the general objective of this project? We want to examine the influence of the spatiotemporal evolution of the children's exposome on childhood programming of chronic disease risk, during the primary school period using a personalized prevention approach and exposomic tools. How can we accomplish this? We can accomplish this through two types of modes, a hypothesis-driven mode and hypothesis-generating mode. Some targeted hypotheses, some examples, let's say, of targeted hypotheses that we can examine using this project is first, for example, to assess the combined effect of the low physical activity, the high exposure to screens and/or unhealthy dietary behaviors on the risk of obesity in primary school years. Then we can also assess how the secondhand smoke exposure is associated with the perturbations in lung function in children. Third, we can assess the combined influence of global environmental change, for example, heat stress, and persistent chemicals, for example, PFAS in drinking water, on the risk of developing cardiometabolic outcomes in children. In order to assess all these hypotheses now, we first need to account for any possible interactions and confounders. Moving on to the hypothesis generating mode, we can assess and see how the children's exposome influences the respiratory system using metabolome as an intermediary layer. We can also assess the exposures of multiple chemicals, their endogenous metabolome, and how this affects the neurodevelopment of primary school children. We can also track the influence of environmental biodynamics in children's exposome and how this is associated with the cardiometabolic disease risk. In order to do that, we will need to deploy novel exposomic tools and biostatistical algorithms. I will mention some of these later. And this will allow us to discover biomarkers and metabolites that they are important. For the methodology now, we are going to perform a pilot prospective child cohort study in Cyprus. We are going to recruit first graders from random generated schools. So we have a random generated list of primary schools in Cyprus, and we're going to contact them. 6-year-old children will be recruited and will be annually followed up until the end of the primary school. So each year, we're going to assess parameters from the general external domain, specific external domain, and the internal domain. And the settings that are going to be assessed are mainly the home and the school where children spend most of their time. For the study population, we're going to eligible children will be those who attend the randomly selected primary schools. They are first graders and they live for the past year in Cyprus. The target number of recruited children is 300, and we want to account here for the urbanization degree. And because of loss to follow-up, we expect that the number of children to be followed up until the end of the primary school is about 200. Here in the table, you can see some indicative numbers of the children to be recruited and the schools to be approached per district and per degree of urbanization. And the idea is that we want to reach the number of 300 children for each district, for each degree of urbanization, And here in the last column, you can see approximately the number of schools to be approached by taking the assumption that we will have a non-response rate of 0.4. For the recruitment part now, since the school settings are going to be the recruitment settings for us, we need to first contact the headmaster, and following their approval, we are going to contact teachers, parents union. We're going to have meetings with parents and children separately. And the recruitment material that we're going to use is initially to provide an informal flyer to parents through school. We can also send this via email, and we can also ask from the parents union to share this using a Viber chat or any other type of chat they use to communicate with parents. Following that, parents who are interested will complete an interest form. We're going to check this and communicate with parents. They need to then sign consent form. The consent form needs to be signed by the legal guardians of the child, and then we need to also gain oral consent from children before any type of assessment. Here with the asterisks are the two, let's call them checkpoints, which means that, for example, if a headmaster says does not agree for the study to take place in their school, then at this point we will need to move to another school and continue with our recruitment process. Similarly, for this part here, if we don't have the majority of the first graders, and by majority I mean 60% plus or minus 10%, then we will not continue with conducting the study in the school. Data collection tools now include questionnaires that will be electronically administered to parents, to teachers, and to headmasters. We're going to use the REDCap software. We will also collect some biological samples. First morning urine voids will be collected at home, and we will pick them up at school. At school premises, we will collect saliva samples from children by trained researchers. Drinking water samples will be collected again from the house, and we will pick them up at school. Anthropometric measurements, meaning weight, height, waist circumference, as well as blood pressure measurements will take place at school premises. And we will also have some air quality sensors and passive samplers for volatile organic compounds that will be installed in the classroom and also in one outdoor location of the selected schools for 1 week. For the data now that refer to the period before the cohort starts, so the period between the pregnancy and until children are 5 years old, we're going to collect data through a questionnaire. So for the pregnancy period, we're going to ask questions about the use of cosmetics and hygiene products, smoking and alcohol habits, and weight gain. For birth, we're going to ask questions about the birth type, the birth weight, height, head, and head circumference. For the perinatal period, we're going to ask questions about health issues, feeding types, and how long these feeding types lasted. And for the ages between 1 to 5 years old, we're going to ask questions about weight, height, waist circumference, and medical conditions. During the period that the cohort will take place, we're going to have this annual data and biospecimen and other sample collection, like the air samples and the water samples as well. So we're going to collect data regarding sociodemographic variables, the residential environment, the home exposures, the parents and child's lifestyle, family medical history, the built environment, the indoor and outdoor air quality at schools, the VOCs, metals, pesticides, and bisphenols in urine samples, THMs and PFAS in drinking water samples, and we're going to ask questions about the school building and the classroom environment to teachers and to the headmaster. For the outcomes now, we're going to ask specific validated questionnaires that refer to neurodevelopmental health outcomes and respiratory health outcomes. Through the sphygmomanometer, we're going to collect data about the blood pressure of children. Through the anthropometric measurements, we'll be able to calculate the body mass index of children. Through the saliva samples, we will be able to assess the corticosteroids levels in children. And through the urine samples, we're going to assess the metabolome of children. Just a summary here, very shortly to present a few methods for the data analysis in order to assess these exposure outcome associations. For the single exposure outcome associations, we can use the classical regression. Another way is the hazard ratios and the odds ratios. And an exposome method is the exposome-wide association study that assesses the association of individual exposome variables with the outcome. For multiple exposures and outcome associations, we can use variable selection algorithms. Some of them include the deletion substitution addition algorithm, the elastic net, and the lagged kernel machine regression algorithm. We can also use methods like the hierarchical clustering on principal component and the partially squared discriminant analysis. This cohort can be used also in order to perform some nested case control studies. So imagine that we are going to have our defined cohort in 2023-2024. And depending on the outcome of interest, we're going to have some children having an abnormal state and some having a normal state. And by the end of the primary school, so 2028, 2029, we're going to have some participants be considered as cases and some be considered as control, again, depending on the outcome. So it's important that we can use this kind of cohort in order to perform nested case control studies. Moreover, if we're going to have this Mediterranean cohort, as we suggest using the Children-First network, it will be very important that we can do some pooled cohort analysis, and this will be give us much more statistical power, since we will have much larger sample size if we combine the cohort studies from the different areas of the Mediterranean network. The feasibility study is currently taking place during this month of May and June 2023. The aim of this is to pilot and to get some feedback for the recruitment, for the data collection tools, for the collection, transfer, and storage of samples. And we divided this into two parts. The first part has to do with focus groups with parents and teachers from 5 schools in Cyprus. This has already happened, and I'm going to present results about this in the next few slides. And the second part, which is currently ongoing, is the recruitment and biospecimen data collection of about 20 children in a public primary school. For the focus groups now, this took place in 5 schools. 2 of them were in Nicosia, 1 in the group 1 and 1 in the group 3. Similarly, for Limassol, we have 2 schools, the group 1 and the group 3. And in Paphos, we have 1 school, degree of urbanization 2. We have a total of 36 participants. 23 were parents, 9 were teachers. We had 1 headmaster and 1 headmistress, and we had also 2 parent union presidents. The themes that emerged out of these focus groups were these 5 here. First, we discussed about the recruitment procedures and material, and we got feedback for that. Then we discussed about how to retain participants from the first grade until the last grade of the primary school and what are considered important benefits for the participants. Third, we discussed about some of the tools like the questionnaires and the urine and water samples. Fourth theme that emerged was about the time of the communication. So when to communicate with the school or with the parents in order to get a maximum recruitment rate. And the fifth is about the fact that we suggest this prerequisite of achieving the majority of first graders in order for a school to be able to participate in the study. For the recruitment part, we provided to the participants of this focus group the flyer, and we asked for their feedback for this. So here the flyer is in Greek, so I don't know how many of you can actually read it, but the idea is that it was divided into different sections, like who is doing this, what is the aim of this, who can participate in the study, what are the benefits of participation, who has approved this, and what to do if you agree to take for your child to participate in the study. And a lot of comments that we received had to do with the need that we need to decrease the content. We need to use much simpler wording and to also add what the participation entails, because this we had it only in the links that they were provided in the flyer. Also, we need to have clear the fact that this will need 1 evaluation per year, because we had the word systematic, and the systematic is not something that is clear from most of the participants. So we need to have clear that once per year an assessment will take place. Also, they wanted for the benefits to be much clearer in this flyers for all stakeholders, because here we have some benefits for the parents and children, but also the schools are going to have benefits in order to participate. So they wanted to see this in the flyer. The language issue emerged, and as they suggested that to understand Greek or English, so we need to consider translating this into different languages. Also, instead of links, we should use a QR code, and we should also include an invitation to a meeting in this flyer. So a lot of us told us that it's better that you give this flyer, but you also have very clear that the meeting will take place so we can see the people behind the study and we can ask questions about it. For the interest and not interest forms that we gave to the participants of the focus groups, you can see here the interest form. Most of the comments that we received is that it was clear, simple, and easy. Comment we received was to add that the interest does not denote participation, as the eligibility criteria need to be checked, and also to add the fact that it's the next stage needs to be signed by legal guardian. So in case there are two legal guardians and one of them is interested but the other does not want for their child to take to participate in this, then they shouldn't get into the trouble of completing this, because we need signatures from both. For the non-interest form now, the main comment we received was that those that are not interested won't even bother to turn to even see this page or to even complete this page. Another thing that we received is that it's maybe good to write why is this needed? Why do we need to know this kind of information from the non-participants? And also we should remove any kind of personal identifier questions from this. For both interest and non-interest form, again, the issue of language emerged, and a good observation that was mentioned was to combine this non-interest and interest form into one page so that everyone receives only one page that they can complete. For the retention part now, so we initially presented to them the benefits of the study, why they should participate or why it's important for them to participate. And the benefits we presented to them was a personalized report that they would receive once per year. Another was the gift voucher of sports goods that they will receive again once per year. And another was a Christmas event with a prize draw. And from most, we received the comment that this personalized report of results was the most important benefit. And they mentioned that we should highlight this. Also, the gift voucher was important for some of the participants. And about the Christmas event, we got the opinion that this might not be convenient for all, since you will have participants from all over Cyprus, so the location is a factor here. Other suggestions from the participants were to have this gift voucher being different each year. So to use, let's say, discount tickets for playgrounds, extreme parks, or cinema. And another option was to provide smartwatches for children. Also, they provided this idea of doing an analysis not only of the drinking water at home, but also of the drinking water at school. And also they wanted to see in this flyer that the ministry will be informed of the results. Another idea was to organize info events at schools that not only refer to the results from this study, but in general about health issues that may be of interest for the parents, the teachers, and the children. When we asked them how would they lose their interest and why wouldn't they want to stay in the study for the next years, they said that if we do not receive this personalized report of the results, then we will not be able to continue. Also, they said that if too much effort is needed, and especially this was about the questionnaires, they again said that they would lose their interest. And another thing that it was interesting was that they said that if boring results are found based on the measurements that we will take, and there are no changes by the school or the ministry, then again, this would make them lose their interest for the study. For the tools now, initially for the questionnaires we provided to them, you can see it here on the top. It was a section where we're going to have actually different sections of the questionnaires. This will be electronically administered using a link. For each section, they will have actually they can complete it between 5 and 20 minutes time. For each section, they will need this much time. We will provide it about 2 weeks in order to complete all the questionnaires. They can also have the option to save and exit later, and independent where they are in the questionnaire. So the comments we got for that is that some of the parents may not be able to complete this electronically. So we need to provide some kind of help for this. The 2 weeks time didn't seem like enough time for them to complete these sections of the questionnaires. And since they're going to use their mobile phones in order to complete this, some of them suggested the use of next. I don't know if you recall this button that you can use next instead of having really long pages to look into the mobile phone. Another suggestion was to use different links and not only one link so that we can contact them more regularly about this. Regarding the urine and water sample instructions, here you can see an example of the urine sample instructions we provided to them. Imagine these are going to be A5 size, and they have instructions in terms of like wash your hands, take the vial out of the Ziploc bag, help your child to collect the first morning urine vials. You can close the vial then very carefully, put it back in the Ziploc bag and give it to us on the same day. We're going to be at school between the hours of 7:20 until 8. The main comments we received about this was that the instructions were clear and easy for both the urine and water sample instructions. They suggested though to have like an earlier pickup time because some children go to school around 7. And they also suggested that the pickup place should be outside of the school since a lot of the parents will not be able to step out of the car, will not have a lot of time. So it's easy for them to just step out of the car, give us the sample, and then return back to their car. Another suggestion was to use video instead of only to have these hard copy instructions. For the other 2 topics, you can see here some of the results. So the majority for a school participation that we wanted to discuss as a prerequisite. So we can only continue with a school in case we have the majority of the first graders participating. We've got a diverse options, opinions here from the participants. For example, some said that this is up to the research team. Others said that this is not feasible. We will not get, it's very difficult to get the majority of the first graders and we will not be able to continue with any school. Then others suggested that if we're going to proceed with this, it's better to communicate it through a number, not percentage. So for example, to say to the headmaster and the parents, in order to continue with your school, we will need to, for example, recruit 15 students. Others said that this is something logical, and since parents talk to each other, maybe they can convince each other to participate. For the timing for the communication with the school and the parents, we got a lot of comments about not communicating with parents in September. And this is because parents of first graders are going into a new environment. They don't know much about it. They are also getting a lot of documents that they need to complete by the school during this period. So they will not pay attention to any kind of flyer that talks about the study. Also, during October, there is this voting of the new parents union, and it's good if we know who these parents are, and a lot of first grader parents are also involved in this parents union, and it's good to have them by our side. The recommendations we get from the pilot study that we can use is first for the recruitment flyer. We need to use a much simpler wording. We need to mention very clearly the benefits, the impact, and what the participation entails. We need to be clear that the participation is voluntary and that anyone can drop out anytime, to use QR codes instead of links, and to invite to a meeting at school premises. Another thing is about the retention and the benefits. The gift voucher, we can make it different each year so that it applies for everyone. The individualized report needs to be delivered once per year. So this is a very important component that we need to take care of. And also it would be a good idea if we get some feedback from parents of when we prepare a template of this individualized report to see if this is something that they would expect or if they would expect something else from this report. And also we need to see how much time this report will need in order to be prepared. The analysis of drinking water sample from school is something that we can do, and since it was requested from a lot. And about the timing for communication with school and parents, as we said, September is not a perfect timing, and also October, it depends on the voting of the parents' union. So we need then to consider the timing of the assessment. Will we have some schools being assessed, some children being assessed before, let's say, Christmas, and then some of them after Christmas? What about seasonality then? We need to consider things about this. Maybe we need to move the assessment later on during January and March. It's things that we can consider, and we need your feedback and comments. About the feasibility study in the one school that we want to perform, we communicated with a school in Limassol, but we had a very low participation. So we moved on to another school in Nicosia, and we use now recommendations from the focus groups. We are in contact with them, and we will see how this will go. And we see that it's very important to have with us the headmaster or headmistress and the parents' union as they move on things forward much easily. Considerations now. In order for this project to work, it needs a smooth collaboration of all associated partners. It needs to have a timely data collection on a yearly basis, and we need to perfectly coordinate participant engagement activities along with the data analysis, because as I said, the parents want to receive these children's personalized results once per year, else they will not want to continue for the next year. The language and the translation are some issues that we need to cover. Things about the flyer and the interest form can be easily translated, but we need to consider about the questionnaires then, as they will need much more time, and will need time for validation as well. The data analysis will be a demanding and time-consuming process, since we're going to explore different exposome methodologies, and we're going to collect and analyze data from different sources. I would like to thank the CII team, Dr. 𝐒𝐞𝐫𝐤, Dr. Pantelis Charisiadis, Christina 𝐒𝐞𝐬, Samuela Bimbola, Elena Ioannou, and Nadine Haddad, as well as Dr. Kostas Christofou and Dr. 𝐒𝐞𝐿𝐵 Kyriakou. And of course, a big thank you to our Cypriot team of collaborators, the Center of Excellence in Biobanking and Biomedical Research, the Research and Education Institute of Child Health, the Department of Chemistry in the University of Cyprus, FIPI Limited, the CP Food Lab, and the Department of Rehabilitation Sciences and Department of Communication and Internet Studies, the Cyprus University of Technology. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Corina, for the elaborate and very, I would say, detailed presentation. So we open now the floor for comments, questions, and discussion. Have any questions or comments? Agapios, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Corina. Very detailed presentation indeed, and very ambitious. So my question is, you mentioned that we have the parents need to be informed on the results. Can you give me an example in order to be more clear, to understand it better?
It's actually something that we are discussing now on which types of results we are going to communicate to parents and how we are going to communicate them. So it's what I mentioned also in the presentation. It's something that maybe we all need to check out to see what would be important for them to see, and also we need to consider the time factor here. So some of the results can be communicated to them in, let's say, much less time, and others that they will need the use of instruments, etc., can be communicated to them in a much later time. But it's something that I think we will need to also discuss amongst us and also see the feedback from parents of what kinds of results they want to see, because most of them mentioned also the fact about the water sample results, that they wanted to see results for this, like for the trihalomethanes, the chemicals in the water, and maybe some urine sample parameters can also be important for them, as well as the air quality parameters of school, and these kind of things might be important for them. Based on our discussions, this is what we understood.
Okay, but we have to be a little bit careful in order not to spread the panic. I mean, based on some of the results, because the parents do not have the background or cannot correlate the whole icon that we may have from the results. But this is something indeed that we need to consider in a second stage. So thank you for the presentation and all the explanation. Thank you. Very well.
Thank you, Agapios. Let's go to the next question, comment. Maria Kiraji.
Hello. Hi, Corina. Thank you very much for your...
Hi, Maria. I cannot hear you very well, but...
Can you hear me better now?
No, much better now. Thank you.
So I have two questions. One regarding the interest forms. You mentioned that both legal guardians should sign the interest form. So regarding this, how are you going to be able to check whether both parents or legal guardians sign this actually? I mean, are you going to have a control, let's say, procedure? Are you going to call them? How are you going to do this?
Yes, the signature needed is for the consent forms. The interest form is just like more of a communication. So we ask for some contact details there. So we won't have any further information for that. But for the consent forms, in order to make sure that we have the legal guardians, one way is to go through school. For example, a check can be done through school that in case we have one signature from, let's say, we can go back to school and just make sure that indeed there is only one legal guardian. That's the way to do it.
Great, thank you very much. And regarding the timing issues that you might encounter, have you considered enrolling second graders so you do the whole information procedure and everything before, like for first year, and then recruit second graders instead of first graders?
Okay, we have not considered that. The truth is, another thing that came up through the focus group was to contact parents and children when they are in the kindergarten. So in order to have the first graders being informed like before, and then to refresh their memory again in school. So we need to consider that. But if we're going to recruit second graders, it's like we're going to miss this first grade characterization, this first grade assessment. So maybe, yeah, we need to consider it, but we need to see how this will apply. Yes.
Great, thank you. And the last question, I'm not sure if you mentioned who will return the results and explain them to the guardians or parents. Have you, do you have a doctor, a pediatrician on site, or someone?
Well, in our team, we have different expertises, as you may have seen from the last slide I prepared. And the idea is that I think during this period of summer, we need to all check out this type of reporting of reporting results to participants. And we can get experience and expertise from all that they are involved, so pediatricians or any other doctors and any others who are experts in this participant communication part.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Just to say that it's very impressive work. Really, I just thinking about all these practical things. That's really, really well done.
Thank you, Natasha. Good to see you. I sense you are very busy, and thank you for being with us and attending the webinar.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely this requires the well-concerted collaboration of different team member expertises within the team. So we have a very good, I would say, network of collaborators, you know, from pediatricians to statisticians, to epidemiologists, toxicologists, chemists, biologists, speech therapists. These are all very, very important that need to work together in a team in order to deliver highest quality products through this effort. Obviously, this is a teamwork that otherwise it will not happen. Any other questions, comments? We have maybe time for one more last question or comment before we hang up.
Hi, Corina.
Hi.
I just have a minor question, a comment, let's say, in terms of the selection of the 17 schools that are addressed in the protocol in the study design. Do you have in mind the locations of these schools? Have you proceeded in any selection in terms of, yeah?
Yes, we have done the randomized order of schools. So all schools were included in on our script, let's say, and using a seat number, there was a random order of the different schools to be approached by district and by degree of urbanization. So now for each kind of, I don't know if you remember the table that I showed before, the idea is that we have this kind of order. So in case one school says no, the headmaster, for example, we move on to the next in order school. So that we have different locations. The idea is to get different degrees of urbanization in different districts, yes.
That's great.
Yes, this is the beauty of actually reaching out to different socioeconomic backgrounds, different files, and we have already seen that with the focus groups in the 5 schools that were coming from different degrees of urbanization and different districts. So you can greatly see how the school profile needs or the school characteristics evolve from a city center going to the peri-urban area or maybe to a rural school. really see a gradient there of different exposures, and maybe we have also a gradient of outcomes as well.
And of course, we need to have in mind that we're proceeding in selecting students that are living in Cyprus for the last 1 year. So we're actually having a great sample of people with a different genetic background. We're not focusing just in Cypriots, Greek Cypriots or whatever. We're gonna have a greater, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you all for your time, and thank you all for your patience during this hour. We are going to revive our meeting for the next month. We will continue this Children First Network webinar series. So stay tuned next month for the next speaker that will be announced soon.